All right, welcome everybody. Super excited to have everyone here with us this morning as we talk about how to leverage your inspection or digital data inside of your organization that translate into your training strategy. Really a warm welcome to everyone. I see some familiar names in our attendees. And this is going to be a very interactive type of session. So please make sure that you have the chat open to chat with any responses. And also, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please make sure to put that in the Q&A. It's going to be very interactive, asking a lot of questions because we want to know a little bit about you. The same way that you're looking for information on today's topic. So a little bit about me. My name's Gary Bonnett. I'm based in Houston, Texas. I'm a customer engagement executive for Safety Culture. But more so about me is for the past 20 years, I have been a safety professional and business leader. And part of that has been in oil and gas, mining, and manufacturing. So I have also been a user sitting in the same seats that you are for the past 8 years, and really have some great stories that I'm going to share with you today on how that helped us, get to certain points inside of our organization, but also, really captured some really big ROI throughout our journey. So to get kicked off today, I just want to ask a couple questions. Is in the chat, could you put in like what state or province or country that you're calling in from? Because I know whenever we had everyone sign up, we had folks from all over the place that were joining us. And it was super fun to see like where folks are from. And I was super pumped to say, hey, so we've got Scotland, we got Louisville, Kentucky, Iceland, England, California, UK, Iowa, Tennessee. How cool is this? Wow, Northern Virginia, Virginia Beach, nice, awesome. Wow, all over the place. This is super exciting. It gets me pumped up. And we can see that we all came here for one reason. We came here to learn. We came here to get better. One of our folks from Canada, hey, Sarah, how's it going? Great. Love it. Love it. All right. So we will go ahead and get started. So to set up a little bit about my history and where we have come from of utilizing a digital platform. Okay, so two organizations that I'm going to talk about today is one, it was a oil and gas services company, and the other one was a large steel manufacturing organization. Both of those had their own unique challenges, but I'm going to talk about them in parallel because both organizations were trying at different parts in their journey, in their safety journey, in their organizational maturity journey, and they were trying to get to a certain place. So in the oil and gas services company, we were on a path of our safety performance was just going in the wrong way. And we had to really digitize and standardize and optimize our processes so that we could see those outcomes of where they would end up if we were to do the right things every single time, but also get those signals, get those indicators that told us where we were winning and where we were losing. So the next question for the chat is, so how are you capturing your data today? So your inspections, your audits, your near miss reporting, are you capturing them on paper or are you doing something digital today? That's what I kind of want to see, just a level set where we're at today. 50-50. Thank you for saying that. Love it. Paper. That's exactly where we started out with. And paper, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Guillermo, great to see you, my friend. So love the answers. Love the answers. So 50-50 moving to digital. Okay. That is the transformation journey. We started out on paper. And if I said, hey, can you show me all your pre-job risk assessments? Man, they would come in with a box full of those pre-job risk assessments. And we're like, okay, now I've got to sift through all this. And how can I trend and track? And what indicators are sticking out to me? In the manufacturing organization, this was a recent buyout that showed me that our goal was to just create visibility of like, we needed to create the habit of, reporting. We need to make sure that our folks were on having a culture and having a plan to report on a consistent basis. And that was observations, whether it's conditional or behavioral observations, near miss reporting, incident reporting. That's what we wanted to see first and foremost of where we were at in our journey. Because whenever we are paper-based or the way that we used to do things, our knowledge is restricted. We have siloed information. Like safety doesn't talk to environmental doesn't talk to operations, so on and so forth. And we are getting away from that. We are becoming an interconnected workplace where mobile applications are like right at our fingertips. And we wanted to make sure in both of these organizations that we were seeing the trends, we were seeing the indicators on a regular basis so that it drove outputs for us. And what is that next phase to include? What is that training strategy? Okay. So with that being said, inside of the iAuditor platform, we kind of started down and made sure that our templates were set up correctly so that we were asking the right questions and the answers were set up the right way so that we would know, what is it that we're seeing? Where are we winning? Where are we losing? Because if you're just getting text answers or you're just getting, just vague answers that aren't telling you something, are you asking the right question? So with that being said, we went down our safety management system, our environmental management system, quality management system, contractor management, HR, and said, how can we digitize, standardize, and optimize each one of these processes? And where is the value add? Are we just checking a box? Or are we getting some value added information that comes out of this for us that tells us a story, a little piece of our story? And how can we put that all together? And then it will allow us to put together of like, what is the next step? Hey, how can I anticipate this process going off the rails, turning into an injury, this going in and turning into, a fire? How can I get these micro indicators lined up so it's telling me that story of like, what do I need to do? And that's exactly what we did, is we had the forethought of making sure that we set up our process and our templates inside of iAuditor, a digital platform that allowed us to say, hey, I'm getting either a failed item and it's showing up in my analytics. I'm getting someone that is being notified directly, or we're seeing it antiquated into the score of the audit or the template that the inspection that they're doing. So that's the story that it was telling us. And that's what we wanted to see, because then on the other end of this, we were looking at our analytical data and saying, okay, now what? Now what? What do we do with this information? And if it's on paper, or we haven't empowered our frontline or our supervisors to give us this information, right? We haven't built that level of trust. We haven't built that level of autonomy for our frontline individuals to feed this data into our organization. We've got to go back to step one. That's the empowerment piece that we've got to start with. Once we empower them and we can see this is exactly what we saw. We saw in the oil and gas services organization, we saw inconsistent servicing of our equipment. It was all being done on paper and it was being lost somewhere. Once we were able to digitize this, it really stuck out to us, like a beacon in the night, saying, hey, you're not consistently servicing this equipment the same way each and every time, whether it be the amount of grease that you're adding to the equipment, the timeline between certain services, and then you are having premature failures to your equipment that is costing you money on a consistent basis. That's unneeded. It's unnecessary to do that. What we saw in the manufacturing organization is we were capturing our observations, near misses, incident reporting. What we saw from the data that we were capturing is that the quality of interaction from our supervisors to our frontline employees was broken. Their communication was broken. The way that they interacted was broken. But also another thing that we saw that came out of this was another consistent piece is we saw these indicators that were leading towards hand injuries. Hand injuries. It was just like beep, 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 hand injury. Hey, there's potential for a hand injury. And we're like, holy cow, wow, this is really giving us actionable data that we can look at and say, I know what we need to do about it. We need to go through our hierarchy of controls and make sure that they are adequate. We need to look at, substitution. We need to look at engineering controls. We need to go and look at our administrative controls. And this is where training came into play. How were we training? What were we training on? Was it sticking with our employees? Had they even been trained on it all? And also what we saw is, we saw that it was low quality observations from our frontline supervisors. The conversations were not impacting or resonating with the frontline workers. And then we saw it because we were doing face-to-face training as well, is that there were gaps in it, is that we weren't all on the same page whenever we were doing our face-to-face training. We were all on totally different levels whenever it came to it. So what we did was we said, okay, we've got to come up with a training solution. And that was for both organizations, the oil and gas services company and the manufacturing organization. We both had LMSs, or learning management systems, in place, but our LMSs, they didn't have a mobile first capability. Like, I could not put the training directly into my employees' hands. They didn't have, micro learning, right? This was canned boxed, training that was done on a monthly basis that might or might not have resonated with our employees. The course library wasn't there, and they didn't have what I needed. They didn't have something that I needed. And that was, for one, the oil and gas services company. It was specific, servicing training for our employees. And for the manufacturing organization, it was specific on leadership and communication. But one thing, all of our folks had smartphones. They had them right in their hands. Like you go and talk to them, they're on Facebook or LinkedIn or, texting their wife. They already had that supercomputer right in their hand with their smartphone. And that's what we did, is we made sure that we empowered our individuals. So the cool thing about it is where EdApp came into play for these organizations is that it was mobile first. It had I could get up and running that single day. So I'll tell you the story of how that happened. So with the manufacturing organization, it was like, okay, I know what we need to do. Here we go. Our frontline supervisors have not been invested in leadership and communication training. This was blatantly obvious from knowing past historicals from them, but also from the data that we were seeing coming in. We weren't resonating. We weren't having the meaningful conversations. So one day it was jump into EdApp, get signed up, get all of those employees loaded in. And we went directly into the public library and took 28 different, great courses that were on communication, leadership, and rolled it out to all of our individuals. It was quick and easy. Cost was not a factor. We set up a leaderboard so they could kind of have a little bit of competition between one another of like, hey, so how am I doing versus my peer? But also we set up a rollout meeting to set the expectation of like, guys, hey, we're expecting you to finish like one of these courses every week. Okay. We want you to jump in there and we want to make sure that we are setting the baseline for the way that we interact with our employees and the way that we get into face-to-face training, because we want it to be more rich. We want it to be more impactful whenever we get in there. So it was super easy. We had an end of the month prize leaders that we were giving out gift cards, and we just saw an immediate change in our face-to-face training. It was amazing to see, like, you get that deer in the headlight look before because you were saying these terms and they'd never heard them before. And because you knew where they should have been and where they actually were on different levels. And that's why this baseline setting and really investing in your employees and your leaders is so important. So coming out of that, not only did the face-to-face training improve, but the audits, the observations, the conversations improved as well, because they were taking some of these tips and tricks and things that, like, oh man, I got this out of my training that was right in my hand, and took it to another level. On the oil and gas services company, it was a little bit different type of strategy, because this was something specific to our equipment. So what we had to do is we created these videos that we added into our mobile first training and put it right into our hands, because we wanted to make sure that our employees were consistently doing this on a consistent basis. But also, hey, we trained them, we gave them, all of the knowledge in the world to do these services consistently and set the expectation on timing of what that could be. And then we could even check and double check, from the data that we were getting from iAuditor of were they meeting those expectations. That was the great thing, because you can't hide from the data. You can't hide from it at all. It's right there. And what did that do for our organization? Well, that turned in to a $2 million repair cost savings for our organization, because we were servicing the right way. We were being consistent in our servicing of our equipment. And we took the time to invest into our employees. that's something that even today resonates with me, because I can think back at organizations that invested in me, in my training that I'm going to take for the rest of my life. And I hold them to a whole nother level in comparison to organizations that were, oh man, well, what if we spend all that money and send him to this course and he leaves? Well, I always like the old adage of like, well, what if we don't spend that money and he stays? That is important for us. And it's really critical to empower our employees to give us this data on the front end that leads to these micro indicators, these beacons, these signals that we're seeing in our inspection and our data that we have in our organization that will lead us to utilizing mobile first platforms such as EdApp, that we can either create our own content. We can turn in our training of like, if you have PowerPoints, send that in so that they can get that changed out for you and into mobile first courses, or jumping into the course library where you can pull in these courses that are already made and get started today. So I want to just take a pause right there. I want to say, please make sure that you're putting any questions that you have in the Q&A bucket. I can't thank everyone enough for your time and attention today. This has been super fun, super interactive. I want to talk about just a couple things in closing. Is I know the power that these mobile platforms have had on me personally, and the organizations that I've worked with. And I know that that is the type of power that it can bring to you, whether you're bringing that with an open API into a Power BI or a Tableau so that you can, really have visibility on that. If you haven't really run through a demo of iAuditor or EdApp, I encourage you to. If you haven't even just jumped into the App Store today and downloaded them both, sign in for free and kind of get started and play around, I challenge you to, because there's things that you can utilize in your personal everyday life that's going to make an impact that's right there at your fingertips. How can you digitize and standardize processes? How can you jump in and look at mobile first training that is right there at your fingertips? And how fun and interactive that can be, how challenging it can be for your groups. A couple great things that we have coming up inside of EdApp are observations. So one way that resonates for me for observations is annual lockout tagout competency evaluation of, hey, are we going out there and trusting but verifying, that our employee is doing this or has the competency to perform this task on a consistent basis? Or are we just trusting? We should never be just trusting. We should be making sure that we go out there and trust but verify on a consistent basis. The next thing is credentialing that's coming up inside of EdApp. This will allow us to put in our certificates, first aid CPR, maybe our man lift training, things that have an expiry date on them that will allow you to track them, of making sure that they're in there, but also be notified that, hey, this is coming up due. Hey, I need to go and get rehacked or recertified on this so that I remain competent and certified whenever it comes to that. The third thing is certificates, making sure that we can print out certificates for certain training. So everyone likes to see a certificate. And that's one thing that we can incentivize our folks on. I know that we have some great things that are coming up with iAuditor and EdApp together. so that we can have some certifications that go along with your competency inside of iAuditor. Are you an iAuditor expert? And that's coming up as well. And one of the things that's really cool for me is the expanded public library. Is I love the content that they have created in there. I mean, I'm in there and playing around because I am a lifelong learner. I never want to miss out on opportunities because I became stagnant. And that's where jumping in and getting into this mobile first training, having it at your fingertips, even if you're laying in bed and you got your device in your hand and going through it, those are cool ways to stay relevant as well. So with that being said, I would love for us to answer a few questions. But if you would like to ask any questions or set up a demo in iAuditor, please scan this QR code. And also, so let's go ahead and get started with a couple questions, shall we? Reminder, if you do have questions, please make sure either put it into chat or put it into the Q&A. So here's our first question. What is your best suggestion to get buy-in from senior supervisors? Over and over I hear, I don't have time, or why are you making me do more paperwork? Oh, this is a great question. This is definitely a great question. So how do we get some of those folks to change their mind or say that they don't have time? Or why are you making me do more paperwork? Well, this is our job as business leaders to explain to them the why. Why is this important to them? Showing them the value add in whatever they are doing, of how this is going to make their lives easier. Because I always kind of revert to, my history in safety is, so what if this incident occurs? How much time do you have to invest in that? And they're like, oh, well, I've got to do, I got to take statements and I got to take them for a drug and alcohol test. And I've got to, the laundry list of things that go into this, and then the stop production. And then we're behind the 8 ball. And I was like, how much time did you spend in doing all of that? Oh, well, that was probably like 8 hours. And if it was a significant event, then I had investigators that came in and maybe we had a shutdown. And you go down the list and you're looking at, multiple hours, multiple days of time that it takes, where you can show them of like, I am trying to have you do the right work whenever it comes to whether it's inspections or audits or taking mobile first training, of like, this is to make you better. This is to make your life easier. That is what I am trying to do for this. Because if we don't, and the outcome happens, then you're going to be spending way more time doing the wrong work, the reactive work that we shouldn't be doing. So great question on that, of just gain that trust, show them the why, and, stick with it. Be consistent in your answers. Because as they continue to see, hey, I'm not going to quit on this. We're going to go down this path because it's what's best for the organization and what's best for you. They'll eventually start to come around. Okay. So next question is, how do you overcome the hesitancy from some employees to download the app? Okay. We've seen this a little bit, but everything that we do today is kind of app based. In the very beginning, they'll like, oh, well, I don't want to, like I said, is you can't hide from the data. Is either you did the training or you didn't do the training. You did the inspection, you took the pictures, you closed out the corrective action, or you didn't. And you can't hide from the data, but we live in a digital world. We live in an app-based world. So showing them that this is a benefit for them is going to be that critical piece, and understanding the whys that come out of it. I think that those are the way of like, hey, this is for a benefit for you. This is a benefit for the organization. And I'll kind of want to take this just a little bit further. Is it's sometimes they're like, well, I don't want to use my own personal device, or I don't want to use my own personal data. Well, in our organizations, we kind of took it a couple steps further than that. Is in one organization, everyone had, a company device. In another organization, we said, hey, you know what, we're just going to write into the contract that we're going to put Wi-Fi throughout the entire facility that you guys can jump on. So you're not going to be using your data, but also we're going to put in a like a $25 a month, cell phone allowance on your paycheck, so that, we're just saying, hey, thank you for utilizing your own personal device, and doing this because we think that it is going to be a benefit for the organization. Next question. Thank you. Keep these questions coming in. We love these questions. So is EdApp looking into email reminders for courses? Yes, absolutely. Yes. And yes, we are definitely focused on that. That is inside of iAuditor and EdApp. Whenever it comes to reminders of like, hey, this course is coming due in 7 days, or hey, this is 7 days overdue. We want to have that functionality not only for the learner, but also for the admin as well, so that you can see, who is doing what, and making sure that, hey, if I need to go and give a general reminder, like in person to someone of like, hey, your courses are overdue, or coming due, that you can as well. Because when employees see that, they didn't just assign me something, and whether I did it or not, they don't care about it. Whenever they see that you actually care, that's whenever they are going to go and like, hey, I'm not going to get on the bad boy list of this list of people that have overdue courses on a monthly or a weekly basis. No, I want to stay off of that radar as much as I possibly can. So great question on that. And I really think that leads us into our next question is, when is scheduling due overdue training function dropping in EdApp? Molly, would you or Brady have any idea on the timing on the full functionality on that?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Gary. And great question, Peter. And it also ties into the question asked right before this. That's our relative due dates feature. And it looks like it's already being worked on and should be coming out in the beginning of Q2. So I would give it maybe a month and a half, but we'll definitely let you know right when that one comes out. And that will come with those email reminders for training as well.
Love it. Great question. And folks, if you have more questions, please put those in the chat or the Q&A. So for Guillermo, I would like to know, if my teams are taking the training, can the platform trend how much of the training is being consumed by the user? Okay, great. So inside of the management or the admin function inside of EdApp, you will have full visibility on this so that you can see who has done what when. The next part of that is the way that you have set up, your questions inside of EdApp that, give you a score for the question. So if we want to say, hey, how much of our guys have retained this knowledge or like understand this, so we can make sure that, you set that criteria the way that you want to set it. If it's a no-go, like you have to obtain this certain score to go to the next level, then you set that up inside of your course that you set up. And you can go in and you can drag any of the questions from or courses from the public library and tailor them to your organization as well. So, in short answer is like you have that functionality to have that visibility on what your teams are doing, when is being done, what is overdue, but also you have that ability to set up those constraints and those passing scores inside of the courses as well. So great question, Guillermo. Really appreciate that very much. One last thing before we wrap things up. If you do have a question, please get that in. If you would like a personalized demo, if you are based in the UK, I know we had a ton of folks in the UK today. Please send an email to Jamie. We love to show our platforms. We love to show iAuditor. We love to show EdApp. We love to show these off. So give us the opportunity to really show out and show you the love on these. If you're in the US, Canada, send an email over to Daniel. And if you are a night owl and in Australia right now, please send an email over to Luke. So Molly, I think that's all that we have for today. Really appreciate everybody's time and attention, the awesome questions. If you do have any further questions, please let us know. And really thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.